Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for today's session on strategic publishing. So this is part of the Researcher and HDR Student Workshop series that we're running. So we would like to begin first by acknowledging that we're hosting this online session from the lands of the Awabakal people. We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands within the university footprint areas, the Awabakal, Darkinjung, Biripi, Warramai, Wonnarua and Eora nations. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections. We would also like to extend this acknowledgement and pay our respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. So the session today is going to be run by myself, Jessica Birchall, and Nicole Fall-Brown. So we're research liaison librarians. So as you can see here, there are 4 research liaison librarians. So we provide support to researchers and HDR students, but we each look after different schools. So if you would like to get in contact with us after the session, our contact details are available on the library webpage, but you can just take note about email addresses and contact us after the session. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them along the way or at the end. So today we'll be mainly focusing on publishing journal articles, finding the right journal. But we're just going to quickly look at book publishing. So as you might have guessed, publishing a book, it is a huge project and it does take a long time. So it's a really good idea to begin the process of looking at and researching possible publishers as early as possible. So it's a good idea to seek advice from colleagues who have had who have had similar material published as to, who they're published with, and ask them about the process of publishing. So it's a really good idea to try and find out about the process as much as possible beforehand. That way it won't cost you any delays along the way. Some other things to think about does the publisher publish work in your subject? So check other published titles, check the recently published titles on the publisher website. Have a look at if your research aligns with the publisher's target audience. While you're looking at the publisher website, have a look and see, does it look like a polished website? Is information easy to find? Is information on the publishing process or contact information? Like, does it clearly outline who to contact if you need more information? Does it list what kind of editorial support the publisher offers? Have a look into the process if possible. Is the publisher responsible for all aspects of the publishing process? Do they review, edit, design, distribute and publicise their products? Does the publisher have a good reputation within the academic community? You might need to check with your colleagues or discuss this with your research liaison librarian. If you're looking at open access publishing, is the publisher committed to best practice and is a member of organisations such as the Committee on Publication Ethics or an Open Access Publishers Association? So if you've already self-published through the university, the library can help you obtain an ISBN. So as I mentioned, these are for publications that have been published by the University of Newcastle. So there are certain conditions that have to be met. So you have to be a current staff or student member, the material needs to be eligible in lines with the ISBN agency. The university needs to be the sole publisher and it needs to be available for sale outside of the university. So see the library webpage for more material about obtaining an ISBN for other self-published material. So now we'll be talking about journal articles.
Great. So when you're looking on where to publish your journals, you want to take a strategic approach or a systematic approach when you plan this process to ensure that you're going to publish in the most effective place to maximise your publishing impact. So it's important to have a stop and think about who is your audience, so who are you writing for? This could be your fellow researchers, specialists in your profession, just other colleagues in your profession, researchers in other disciplines, industry, educators, or are you looking to also for the public or just anybody that might have an interest? So that will change how you're writing, but also what target journal you might want to look at. Are there any publishing conventions in your discipline area that you should know about? For that, you can obtain advice from fellow researchers, colleagues in your area. So they will give ideas on that conventions that we mentioned, but also what journals do they publish in? Is someone in your college already publishing in high quality journals that you could seek advice from? You want to submit, as we said, submit your publication to a reputable peer-reviewed academic journal, which targets your specific discipline area. Other things to think about, are you publishing under a grant? Because grants often have requirements on where to publish, the type of journal to publish in, and whether or not that actually needs to be an open access publication. And if you have funding available that sits with under that grant, again, it's just things to think about that if there is a specific requirement that you do need to follow with that. Now, what we look at when we think of if a journal is of a good quality is what we call journal metrics. Now, they indicate the quality of a journal only. So they don't actually assess individual articles and their quality. It purely just focuses on the journal. What we've got here is that people often ask us about journal impact factors. Now, we'll talk a bit about that as we come to the journal citation reports. But what it is a term owned by Clarivate. So it's something that you're only going to see when you look up something in Web of Science or journal citation reports. Now, they only index a small percentage of international and scholarly journals. It has a bit of a bias towards English, STEM, North American, so it doesn't cover other things. So what we will look at today is other sources that you can use. Although the journal impact factor is a big one and often referred to, there's also other places we're going to walk through about where to find these. So you can come across some issues when it comes to journal metrics. So they contain how they're calculated. So the journal citation reports, their metrics are only based off citable items. Now that means if someone has published an editorial or a news item, they're excluded from that count. And another thing to note is that the NHMRC has a statement that when it comes to applying for funding or hiring or promotion, they actually request that you do not use journal metrics or an ERA journal ranking for the argument as to the reason we have mentioned above, that they only rank the assessment of the journal. They don't actually look at the quality of the papers within there. So just remember that, yeah, if you're going to talk about a journal metric, it is only for the journal. But when it comes to applying for grants, promotions, things like that, you can actually include the quality of a journal in a statement like we've got on the screen here. So this is saying that if I was going to put in for a promotion or something, I could actually write that my research on editing disorders in teenage, eating disorders in teenage and young adults has resulted in 6 publications, which are the first author, including one in a top-ranked journal in nutrition and dietetics and another in a top-ranked journal in the field of clinical psychology. So you can talk about the journal and that it's a top-ranked or that it is a quartile 1, which we'll look at again shortly, within applications. But just remember that it's only when you're talking specifically about the journal, and that check whether you're applying, whatever funding or grant you're applying for, check their requirements as to what they actually allow you to do with this. Now, what we're going to move through now is things to look at as you choose your journal. These are all available via our Strategic Publishing Library Guide, which will show you where to find in a demonstration. But that looks through, we want to think about the relevance of the journal to our discipline, whether timeliness is a factor. And when we think of timeliness, we're actually thinking about how quickly you need to publish your work, where that work can be accessed and how easily it is discoverable by other people. And then we're looking at the quality and esteem of the journals that you publish in. So when you're looking, we're going to talk about these 4 categories as the main concept of choosing your journal. So the first we've got is relevance. So the main concept here is that we're looking at, is the journal relevant to your research discipline? So we talked about the audience earlier on. So does this journal actually suit the target audience that you've identified earlier? Do the aims and objectives of that journal match your research? So things like that you'll find on the publisher's website. Importantly, does it also publish the type of article you're working on? So if you're doing a case study, or earlier we talked about there's some reviews that are not indexed in JCR, does the journal that you're actually want to publish in publish the piece of work you're doing? Are the editorial board members and reviewers, experts or practitioners in your journal? So have a look at that as you look through the websites. Make sure you check out who's on that editorial board, or who's going to be doing that peer review on your work. Make sure their expertise also aligns to that journal, and is that, again, relevant, makes it relevant to you. And does it, if you're publishing, you'll assign FOR codes, so field of research codes, to your discipline, and does that journal actually fall within that category? If someone was to look that up, would it match? So we've got some resources that can help you map through to see whether a journal is relevant to what you've done. Now, they're linked on this slide, and we'll pop the links in the chat. They're also all available off the Strategic Publishing Guide. The first one there is Jane, and it stands for Journal Author Name Estimator. It's just a website. What it enables you to do is enter the title and or abstract of a paper in a search box, and you can just click find. It will then go off and compare your document to other documents that are indexed mainly within PubMed to find best matching journals or other articles that are published under a similar subject area, so that you can then look through that list and go, oh yes, this journal stands out a lot, or a lot of people publishing under a similar title have published in this journal. And then you would then go back and assess the relevance of that journal against the criteria we've just discussed. The other one is a manuscript matcher. It runs and is accessed free if you have an EndNote Online account. And again, search for when I say the title or the abstract, that is your title or abstract that you want to write about. Pop that into the search field. This one will run a search against Web of Science, and it will actually include journals that are going to match your paper and give you impact factors, journal quartiles, or a subject category. And then you can actually click on with any of that to narrow that search down and be given a list by subjects as well. The last one there is the Journals Guide. Again, it's a free tool, and you can search by journals if you already know them. You can look at publishers, and you can again type in your title, and it will actually bring up a list of similar titles and where they are published as well.
I'll just make a note that the link for the EndNote manuscript matcher that's been put in the chat, that's just a link to the Clarivate support page about that particular product because it's available in EndNote Online. You need to log in to access it, so we couldn't share that link. So the link for that is just to the Clarivate support page. Will give you more information about the product.
Thank you. The next bit is timeliness. So as we said, it's about how quickly you need to get the work out, basically, and how long it will take to be published. So something to think about as you start preparing to publish is have a bit of a time frame in mind. So you need to consider that point of how long will it take to get from the submission through a peer review process and then how long to get published. But you do need to weigh that up. If you want, some publishers will offer you a really fast turnaround, but you then need to weigh up whether that it's going to be a quick peer review process as well. So weigh up the importance there of that to you, and you would want to make sure you're getting a quality peer review process to ensure that your publication is in a good journal. So again, we've got some resources listed there on the page. Again, we've got the journal's guide. So in addition to other things we talked about for relevance, it does also, users can submit information to the journal's guide, and it will actually tell you whether another user has published in this journal and how long it actually took them to go through the process. So that speed of publication round, how long it took to go from submission through to published. The American Psychological Association does contain information on their pages for their journals about rejection rates, where their works are circulated, and that lag time or process there and the time that it takes again to go from submission to publish. Similar to SciRev on the bottom, and it is actually something that researchers can share their experiences to and how the process they've gone through to submit their work and their opinion on that with certain journals as well.
So next up, we'll be looking at access and discoverability. So it's really important that the journal that you choose to publish in is able to be accessed easily by readers. If it's obscure and hard to find, it will not reach readers. So journals are picked up and indexed by databases. So if a journal is indexed in several databases or in a large citation database, such as Scopus or Web of Science, it will definitely reach more readers. Also have a look to see if the journal's indexed in a discipline-specific database. This will allow readers to find the article while looking sort of in the general subject area. I almost missed open access. It's very important. So something to think about is the journal open access, which will allow or will the journal allow your article to be made open access in some way? So open access provides free access to readers. There are many journals that support and provide open access, and that there are several ways that the library can help make your article open access. We have several agreements and processes available at the moment designed to help you pay for article processing charges to make your work open access. We have transformative read and publish agreements for certain gold and hybrid journals. We have an author processing charges fund that on approval will pay for author processing charges for articles in high quality journals. And we also have access to open access publishing discounts for certain gold and hybrid open access journals. So that information is available on, there's an open access agreements page that's available via, the research support link on the library page. So one way to see if your journal is indexed in databases is to look at Ulrich's Web. So this is available through the library databases list. So it's a directory which lists periodicals, including scholarly journals. So I'm just going to give you a quick demo as to where to find it. So we can see here we're on the library homepage. If you scroll down to our list of databases, you can enter in the database that you're looking for across the top. So Ulrich's Web as one word. I'll open that in a new tab. So you just basically enter a title or an ISSN or some subject terms to find the journal periodical. I think we've picked possibly the hardest journal to demo in. So I'm really testing my spelling skills. See, I've already spelled that wrong. It's okay, let's see if we can find it. So we can see here, here is our journal that's come up. I don't know why the screen looks like that. That's odd. So if you select the journal title, you can see here some basic information about the journal, the publisher, the year that it was started, the serial type, the frequency of the publication. But we can also see information that we can use to determine if it's, you know, a good quality journal as well. So we can see here that it is a peer-reviewed journal. So this little icon here is a referee's jacket, I do believe, which I didn't know about until recently. We can also see here that it is open access. So that's the symbol for open access, is that open padlock. And if we scroll down, also gives some more information, the subject, classifications. But to see where the journal is indexed, what databases it's indexed in, if you select abstracting and indexing, we can see a list of databases that this particular journal is indexed in. So it's in Web of Science, it's in PsycInfo, it's in Embase, Scopus. So here's where you can kind of get a glimpse of where that journal will be indexed across. So we can see here that this is available in lots of different databases, so it will have good coverage. Oh, it's still going. So to see if it's available, to look for an open access journal, what you can look for the directory of open access journals, which gives you a list of curated peer-reviewed open access journals. You can also look at have a look and see if an article's open access as well. You can do like a subject search. So if you're looking in a particular, you don't have a title in mind, you're just looking for a particular subject, you can do it that way as well. Let's go across here. I'm not going to type that again. Word lesson. So basically for this database, if you're looking for a specific journal, if it comes up in the search, it is open access. So we can see here the different Creative Commons licenses that are available. And it just lets you know, again, some general information, how much it costs to make it open access. As I mentioned, the different Creative Commons licenses. And again, it gives you links sort of straight to the publisher's page as well. Another tool that can help you, particularly for different types of open access, is Sherpa Romeo. So Sherpa Romeo gives information regarding the journal's copyright and its open access policies. So if you can see if an article in the journal can be made open access or a version of your article can be made open access at some point. So again, so this is where it gets a little bit tricky, a little bit detailed. So we can see here the different versions of your article. So a published version, so this particular, as we saw, it's open access. So a publisher version can be made open access without an embargo using these licenses. If a journal was not open access, you could look at the different ways you could make it open access through the accepted version or the submitted version. So the accepted version is the article, is the version of the article that's accepted for publication, but just doesn't have the formatting. It's usually not a PDF, it's a Word document, doesn't have any of that publisher's logo or any of their formatting, so it will just look like a normal Word document. But most journals, if it's not open access, will let you put an accepted version up on an institutional repository. So the university's institutional repository is called Nova. So you could pop that version on the repository and that would be open access. So if we go back to the presentation. And next up, we'll be looking at quality and esteem. So Nicole's already mentioned about metrics. So we'll be looking at how we can use metrics to measure the quality of a journal. So it's important to check the quality of a journal to make sure that it's reputable and high quality, so that your research can be seen and shared in a high quality publication. So one way to check for quality is to see if a journal is peer reviewed. So scholarly journals are usually published by and for experts in the field, and to be accepted for publication in a peer reviewed journal, an article needs to pass through the peer review process, in which a group of experts in the field reviews the article for content and academic value. So the review process helps ensure that articles reflect solid research. As I mentioned before, you can check to see if a journal is peer reviewed via Ulrich's Web. Always check the publisher website as well, just to double check that it is peer reviewed. We also mentioned the ERA journal list. So ERA stands for Excellence in Research Australia. It's a kind of stock take of research across Australia's university, looking for best high quality research, and compares them across international benchmarks to improve research quality. So the journals that are included on the ERA journal list are of high quality and publish original research. So if you want to know if your journal is included on the ERA journal list, you can contact your research liaison librarian and they can check that out for you. So I'll be talking about sort of the definition of the metrics available through Clarivate and Scopus. I'll go through the definitions of what's available, and then Nicole's going to give a demonstration of those sites. So first up, we have the journal citation reports and the journal impact factor. So they can be accessed by the library database list. The reports are provided by Clarivate. So as Nicole mentions, that houses Web of Science. So it includes the sources that are indexed by Web of Science. So they include citations, citation information, trends, and ranking, but it mainly sort of focuses on that journal impact factor. There are sort of different metrics that's the basis for, isn't it? Yeah. So the impact factor is the average number of times articles published within the journal in the past 2 years have been cited in the current journal citation report year. So the example we have here is a journal impact factor of 2.5 means that on average, the articles published 1 or 2 years ago have been cited 2.5 times. So the usefulness of the journal impact factor varies significantly by field. So some disciplines have low citation counts compared to other disciplines. And sometimes this doesn't necessarily indicate the quality of the authors or the article within the journal. So as Nicole mentioned previously, it's a good idea to rely on that as sort of a general statement within your impact narrative. So next up we have the products that are provided by Scopus. So we have Site Score and the Source Normalized Impact Per Paper, or SNP. And Scopus also includes, well, it provides the information that's used for the Scamargo journal ranking, so the SJR as well. So Scopus can be accessed by the library database page. Site Score relates to the average citations per document published in the journal within the last 3 years. So it includes all the different document types indexed by Scopus. So it doesn't sort of limit itself to, just research articles. It includes all the document types. So this can't be used to compare between subjects. So it's not a subject or field normalized metric. So it's just about how much has been cited within a particular journal. The source normalized impact per paper, it measures actual citations received relative to citations expected for the serial subject field. So whereas Site Score is not a field normalized metric, SNP is. So a SNP average score for all journals in Scopus is approximately equal to 1. So generally anything above 1 is better than the average. It takes into account the characteristics of the source's discipline, things like the frequency that authors within that field cite other papers, the speed at which citation impact matures, and the extent the database covers the field literature. So your Scamargo journal ranking, the SJR indicator, is a measure of the scientific influence of scholarly journals that accounts for both the number of citations received by a journal and the importance or prestige of the journals where the citations come from. So it's a numeric value representing the average number of weighted citations received during a selected year per document published in that journal during the previous 3 years, as indexed by Scopus. So this is all these metrics are relating to Scopus. So the citations are weighed according to the subject field, and they use the Scopus subject fields. So obviously, the higher the SJR, that indicates that it is of a greater journal prestige. So whilst it uses what is indexed in Scopus, it's actually an external tool that originated from a research group at the University of Granada. You can see the SJR within Scopus, but it's also available on a separate website. So you can go to the Scamargo Journal and Country Rank and have a look at that on its own, but you can also use that in conjunction with Scopus. So as we've kind of mentioned a couple of times, the metrics within these particular tools are sort of very heavily geared towards the sciences. So if you're in the humanities or social sciences, whilst they will be included, there's not as many in these particular metrics tools. So definitely contact your research liaison librarian if you're needing help with looking at the quality metrics for sort of humanities-based journals. We do have an example of an indicator of quality for business journals. So the ABDC journal quality list is for journals around business. So it's created by the Australian Business Deans Council, looking at business, economics, sort of business related law, tax, commercial, marketing, statistics, tourism. So it's definitely focused on business, and their ranking system is based on letters rather than numbers. So you can see it starts with A star, and then goes A, B, C. And there is criteria to be included on the ABDC journal list, as you can see there. And there's a link to the ABDC journal quality list in the chat as well. And Nicole will give us a quick look at that one as well. So now we're going to have a demo of those tools.
Okay, so again, so we'll start with the journal impact factor. So again, we can, from the library's database list. Okay, we've got journal citation reports. So we'll use the same journal example. So if I come here.
Oh, you cheated.
Yeah, I spelled the word. Now, if this journal is indexed within JCR, you will actually see it populate underneath. If you start typing and it doesn't, it usually indicates that journal is not within this database. But for today, we want this one. So the journal citation reports update yearly. So we are currently on the 2020 release, and the 2021 release is likely middle-ish of this year, I believe. Now, the journal citation reports also come in 2 editions. Now, those editions are the Social Sciences Index and the Science Citation Index. Just means that there'll be 2 different categories that you'll see that indicate subject areas for a journal. So for this one, what we're seeing here is this journal is indexed in social sciences and the science. One's in the category of psychiatry for both. It's written in English. It's got an electronic year of 2011. It's published by Cambridge University Press. The left-hand side there tells us this is an open access journal and has been since has been added in there since 2020. If you click on the little thing here that says view title change, it just tells us here that the abbreviation has changed over the years. So that's handy to know. Here we've got ISSNs. But what we're interested in today is looking at this section here, the journal's performance. So if I scroll down a bit, we'll see here, I just mentioned the journal impact factor. Journal impact factor for this journal is 6.892. And you'll get a little graph here of how that journal impact factor has changed over the years. And we said that it was in both of those editions, under the sciences and the social sciences. So you can see the trends changing with this little graph as to if the journal impact factor goes up or down. That's just a handy way to have a look and go, well, how has it changed over the years? Is it just drastically increased or is it drastically decreased? Because Clarivate do actually run through, and each year when they release new lists, things can be suppressed. So journals that are suppressed can sometimes have that impact factor or quality ranking change or completely disappear from this database. So when something gets removed, it's often around self-citing, or they're really heavily promoting citing within the same journals. So Clarivate do check all of this. So if you do come in one year and go, hey, this journal's got a great impact factor, but the next year it's either gone or it's really, really low, they're kind of things that these Clarivate look out for when they're looking at it. We've also got the Journal Citation Indicator, which is a relatively new one added to the journal citations. And that is, again, it's a field normalized metric that will be calculated for all journals in the Web of Science collection that are published in JCR, and it represents an average category normalised citation impact for papers published in the prior 3 years. So, for example, something published in 2020, it's calculated for the journals published cited items in 2017, 18 and 19. So that's why this one's a little bit different. Again, tells us how many citations this journal has had in that year. And again, we can see a trend. So they're increasing. You got things like distribution. We can see here how much is published open access. So we can see that 41% of this journal is published gold open access. 25% is subscription or free to read, and the other ones say non-citable items. Now, when we say impact factor, the number is good, but what you also want to do is scroll down. We're about halfway down the page now, and what this tells us is rank by journal impact factor. So this is going to tell us for the category of psychiatry. And remember, we had the 2 editions, so one is sciences, the other one is social sciences. There are 156 journals indexed within the journal citation reports under this category, and this particular journal, the Epidemiology and Psychiatric Sciences, is ranked number 18 within that list. So it tells us here, so for this is the rank, and that is actually a quartile 1 figure for this. So you can actually scroll through this list as well, and you can see here over time that the journal has increased, the category has increased in its number of journals in that subject area, but over time also that the quartile has changed. So in 2012 it was a quartile 2, but for 2020 it's actually back up in the quartile 1s. And the other part is you can see down the bottom, like it goes on and it does really go into a lot of depth about it, but you can see who were the big contributors to this journal by their organisation, which countries are the big contributors to the journal as well. It's all little handy things to have a look at as well, and the bottom part is just some extra additional metrics. But I've showed you a lot there, but the main things you want to come in and have a look at and go, yes, this is the journal I want. It's great. It's actually open access. You'll see the journal impact factor, and then just scroll down to halfway down and you'll get the rank, because your big ones you want to know for publishing is what quartile that is actually in.
Do you have a question? Lisa wants to know, is there a way to confirm whether a journal is included in the SCIE, you know, the 2 definite lists? For example, if a journal cannot be found in JCR, does that mean it is not one of those journals?
If it's not in, if the journal is indexed within JCR, it will tell us which category it's in. But if the journal is not in JCR, you might likely find it in another database, like we might find it again in Scopus, and it's got its own categories that it will categorise things under. So it'll be just about looking within where you find that publication to see which one it sits under.
So yeah, as Nicole mentioned before, that sort of terminology, the SSCI, is only for the Clarivate, the journal citation report. So if that's sort of that language used for this particular tool. So it doesn't necessarily mean it won't be found elsewhere. Yeah.
So we've looked at how to do when you know the exact title. The other option is, that's okay, Lisa, we can browse by category. So we can come up the top, browse by category, and if I'm publishing in, we'll go arts and humanities. Let's say I want to look at classics. It tells me here that there are, so the two groups, and there are different editions. So there are we'll click the first one. There are 42 journals in here that say they're under the category of classics. And again, that breaks it down. So we can just see this list here. These are your journal names, RSSN, you've got your classics. You'll have a journal impact factor. If something's relatively new, it may not have one yet. Or it's not indexed there. We might try the other list, so that's not a good example. Oh, sorry, back too far. Browse. Let's just go with agricultural engineering then, so we can see. Oh, yeah.
I was going to say it's been behaving really well. Fingers crossed.
Okay, so that's a better example. Sorry about that. So if we come here, it'll tell us the journal name. Just at a glance, we can then see which quartile these ones fit in. So obviously the classics ones hadn't been categorized. So we can just scroll through and go, look, you know, I want to know what quartile ones are in our agricultural engineering. And we can see these top three, these three here, they're all a quartile one journal. And then you can click in, and then you'll be back on that level of detail that we just had on the other journal. Okay, so that's journal citation report. The other one we will look at is Scopus. So to look for a specific journal, you could click on the Sources tab. And again, we'll just go with the one that we had before. Say find. Okay, and again, it'll pop up here and it's found the title. So as just said, site score is kind of the Scopus Elsevier version of Clarivate was journal impact factor. Elsevier Scopus is site score. And it tells us here that this one, its subject area is public health, environment and occupational health, and it's ranked at 25 of 526 publications. So you can see there's a lot here for that one. If I click on the title, we've mentioned you get your publishing details on the side. We can see here your subject categories, they're different in Scopus as we saw in SciVal. And on the side here, we've got those metrics. So your site score at 8.4, SJR at 1.7, and your SNP at 1.84. So we can then scroll down. It tells us here how it's calculated that one for you. And then if we click on site score, rank and trend, it's going to tell us here which, so we know we're at 25 of 526. This is then going to list those 526 journals for us in that public health category. So you can see here the actual first one with a site score of 39 is number 1 because it's in the 99th percentile, which is still your quarter 1 journals. You can export any of this content from Scopus if you prefer to work in Excel or anything like that. You can just say export. So that's, you can see there's not as great in-depth detail in there, but you still get your idea of what's your journal ranking and an idea of which ones are in the top ones for you. You can also search this one by, if I go back to sources, you can also search by subject area if you prefer. So you just click subject and we can do the drop down. So we might choose this one. Okay, so cancer research, there are 321. So you can see the list there on the page. Again, you've got your site score, your percentile and number, the ranking, your citations. So you can actually click on it for that more detail. So the Nature Reviews in Cancer is ranked number 1 within that subject area of biochemistry, genetics and molecular biology with a site score of 78. Now that one is Scopus. So we said you had the SJR you could see in Scopus, which is your Shimano Journal Rankings. It also has its own website. Okay, so when you go to here, you'll land here. We can type in the name of our journal again. If it finds it, it'll be here. So again, you'll see the top here, it's got the open access symbol. You can see which category it kind of aligns to, or multiple categories. It's got a H index, it tells us it's a journal that will link us out how to the publisher information on the journal. I scroll down, this little graph here on the bottom tells us which in each of these subject areas what quartile that journal is in for that subject area. So your yellowish colour is quarter 2, the green say it's a Q1 journal, I believe orange is 3 and red is 4. So again, you can see over time how it's changed for each of those. So I guess it's important to remember that just mentioned we have the APC fund earlier. It's just important to note you want to check your JCR and Ishimago rankings because there does need to be a quarter 1 in both of those to be eligible. So that's how you go about checking this type of information. So it allows you to change the view if you prefer to look at it in a table view or you prefer to look at the graph. Has a bit of ads because it's a web page to scroll via, but it
doesn't look good, yeah.
No, it also suggests other journals too that are, it says this is 86% similar to the one I typed in. It might be something I want to have a look at if I'm still in that process of debating where I want to publish. You've got your a few little graphs down the bottom so you can see how that rank has changed over time, the number of documents, how many citations documents are on average getting. This one is your total sites versus self-sites that we mentioned earlier. So they've got very low self-sites, which is good. You've got your international collaboration, so you can see that's growing for this journal. It's also something handy to look at. So there's a few little graphs there, and again, you can change the views if you don't like the graphs. You can go in and have a look at a list.
So we've got a question just in relation to, we're talking about quartiles. So Liz has asked, should you aim for a Q1 journal? When should you not do so? So, I mean, generally speaking, the rankings are important, and it's always good to go for sort of the best quality, the highest ranking journal. And I know the university, particularly with the academic dashboard at the moment, are pushing, you know, that's where you want to post your research. Where it probably misses the mark is sort of new journals. So things that are just coming out, they sort of haven't had that chance to sort of have all the, you know, the citation rates and things like that included. And I would say that if a Q1 journal doesn't meet any of your other needs in that, you know, it's the different subject area, different audience, and those sort of other indicators, that like it would be a good place to publish in, and I wouldn't necessarily publish in it just because it's a Q1 journal.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to add, Nicole?
No, I think you covered it.
Yeah.
Good.
It is a good indication, but it's not always the best. And as we've sort of mentioned, it's always sort of geared towards you know, your health and sciences and not so much humanities. So they are included, but just not at the same sort of rate, because they don't have the same sort of citations and that citation rate and that kind of thing. So, but if you have any more questions, feel free to contact one of us after the session. We can talk about it more.
So the last one we wanted to have a look at was the Australian Business Deans Council list. So again, it's a website. So if we just Google ABD list, it's this one here, the Journal Quality List, Australian Business Deans Council. So it says at the top, this is current as up to December 2019. So again, you can do a search by a journal or an ISSN. Oops, I'm scrolling quickly. Or we can go field of research, or sorry, so kind of subject. So let's go statistics. And so we said the other ones are Q1s, Q2s, 3 to 4. The rankings for this list, A star, your A, C, B list. So if I want to go, I want to know everything in statistics that are of an A star rating. I'll just click this and say filter. And this will give me a little list here of all of the journals that are in that, who's the publisher, so that you can then, and you'll see here it says rating, and you can go out to that publisher and find a little bit more detail about how to use it. That's kind of how this page works. You'll either search your title or by the subject code there. So that is that one. You can also do if you prefer, again, to work in Excel, you can do a full export to Excel of all of those journals so that you can keep them in that form either. And you just filter through if, and it just changes for you to see which one. So it's a good way to have a look and see what's out there for you when you're actually looking on where to publish. Okay, go back to, well, the last, sorry, we'll go one more. The last page that kind of brings all of this, what we've talked about today together, is actually called Think, Check, Submit. And we have got a link to this off of our university, of our strategic publishing guide. Now, it actually does have some really good checklists on it. So if I go to, we'll rewind right back to the start, we talked about publishing books or book chapters. If I click this one, it tells me those, so think of those categories. What have I got to think about? what should I check and what do I do before I submit? And it just gives you a really good checklist there, and you can also download a PDF version of that to keep. Or just things, yeah, make sure you have a look at before you want to submit. And we have the same for journals. Got the journals at the top. Again, your little checklist to download. But all the things we covered today would be listed in there. Does talk about predatory publishing. So I guess today we've talked about all the things, the good things you should look out for when you're looking to publish. On Friday, we are having a session around all the things to look for with predatory publishing as well. So that'll go into a little bit more in depth on the what they shouldn't do, basically. I guess I don't know the right word I want to say.
Yeah. There will be a little bit of crossover because you're sort of looking at the same concepts as well.
That does bring us to the end of the session today. So is there any more questions that anybody might have that we haven't addressed yet?
So Deep's asked a question. I'd like to know about the journals which publish the papers having negative results. Sometimes the results obtained from an experiment are opposite to the hypothesis or the concept. Those results are consistent even after repetitions, which shows its authenticity. To publish such results is a challenging task. Oh, that's really interesting. I might contact you after the webinar, Sandeep, and we can talk about that more.
Yep.
We can look.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we can look into that. No problem. So Ben has also included in the chat the link to a survey. If you could fill out that survey, we'd really appreciate it. Just give us your feedback on the session today, and put in any suggestions for any types of like the subjects for webinars or sessions that you'd like to see. That gives us a really good idea as to, you know, what you guys want us to present about. Yeah. So yeah. So here are some of the upcoming sessions. So as Nicole mentioned, we've got a session. So we've looked at what to look for. This is what is bad when looking at publishers. So how to identify and avoid predatory publishers. We've got three face-to-face sessions coming up at Callaghan campus. So we've got one about researcher identifiers. So looking at, you know, ORCID, Scopus, Web of Science researcher identifiers. Then after that is a Creative Commons licensing session. So looking at the licenses you'll be using if you are interested and are publishing open access. Then we also have a workshop on looking at the impact of your publications with SciVal and Insight. So kind of following on from what we were looking at today. So SciVal looks at the metrics that are in Scopus, and Insights is what is in Web of Science. The next one is on traditional metrics, and then the last session is about using Altmetrics Explorer to track your impact. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Please feel free to contact us, send us an email to continue the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.